Hey there. I don't really know what I'm gonna talk about today. So if you're just finding this video and you've never watched any of my other videos, you might want to check some of them out because I do actually say some stuff in those. I might end up saying something here, but I don't have anything planned. I'm just feeling like rambling, I guess, a little bit. I've been busy working for every moment that I have free. Into late night hours and long shifts. And before I get right back into it, I was just kind of taking a moment. I did some Palo Santo and probably do a meditation after this. Maybe I should have done it before. But I hadn't checked in here in a while, so here I am, still alive and kicking. And observing what is going on around us, And it's fascinating, isn't it? I feel like maybe it's my ego that wants to say this, but like this is what I've been telling my friends and family would be happening. Like, so I had the sense that this was happening, and it's kind of cool to see it happening. And also, if I think about it too much, my human brain could get into worries and fears around it. But because the reason that I knew it was going to be happening is because, like, I've been paying attention to this, what I would call guidance from spirit. And that told me. That gave me the impression. That led me through signs, symbols, and messages that this would be going on. And what I'm talking about when I say this, it's like the restructuring or crumbling of all the systems that were corrupt. And along with that, we see ourselves going through like earthquakes. And my heart goes out to everyone affected by these, in terms of loss of life and livelihood. And it's a time of great change, obviously. And it's been a time of great change. It's just that it wasn't as obvious to a lot of people, I think, for a while, like the status quo was still sort of there, even while the changes were kind of going on around, right? And a lot of silent changes, a lot of, like, I can remember that when a certain wave of, I'm going to call us star seeds, when a certain wave of star seeds came online back, I don't know, about 6-7 years ago. What year is it? I don't know. It was more than that. So 8 or 9 years ago, something like that, there was this big wave of star seeds that came online, and a lot of us were sort of spread out. We're spread out in a grid on Earth. And we all sort of had the same access to the same, like, understandings and knowings about what we're doing here. And we started to get busy on alchemy and building bridges for energy to shift within human consciousness. And now, all these years later, which isn't a lot of years in the biggest picture view, but like, I see these changes coming out in more mainstream places, right? So these little ripples that we were able to make are still rippling out, right? And causing changes, and consciousness has been shifting progressively. And the 3D reality is now reflecting, And so if you think about when you have some sort of like irritant in your body, and then the skin is trying to like rid you of it, the skin will kind of blister up, right? To try to like get the stuff out. It'll become inflamed and kind of make some pus and some pressure. Well, for instance, if you had a sting with some venom in it, right? Like, so what's happening is we can kind of see things kind of like pulling up, right? And that's all that's happening. Is so it might look a lot worse right now, but all this was there under the surface the whole time. It's just coming up into light. Light is like love. It's like understanding. It's like compassion. It's like awareness. It's consciousness. And what we are conscious of, we can change. If we are having this stuff all under the surface, and it's, maybe the people who are participating in it are knowing about it, but a lot of them were just unconscious, meaning not even aware that they're participating in this, right? It's like when you going to the school system, and you're going through the school system, and you're putting your kids through the school system, and not realizing that the school system was made to indoctrinate them into a certain industrial complex, and some of those industries have really put a taxation on the earth and the people, and it actually might have served to make some people wealthy while others suffered greatly, and not just their finances, but their health and their time with their family, their connections, So everybody's needs weren't able to be met the way that things were going, right? Because some people decided that they would structure the school system in a certain way. And that's just an example. And when I'm speaking about it, please take it with lots of grains of salt and very lightly, because I'm only using it as an example. I'm not an expert. I don't know facts about who made it up and how it came into being or any of that. I'm just kind of using it as an example to say, like, when you're born and you go into and you put your kids into the school system, you do it because that's what the people before you did, and that's what the people before you did, and that's what you do, and you have to go to work anyway, so where else are your kids going to go? And also it's illegal to not put your kids there for a long time. Right now we have the option to homeschool, but there are regulations on that too. And I think you can get into trouble if you're not following them. So anyways, we have industrialized a bunch of processes, not only the school system being a way to indoctrinate into industrialism, but our birthing processes were industrialized, and we put a bunch of, false beliefs into the public based on what companies who wanted to market to the public were saying. And that includes pharmaceuticals. And also just like the makeup industry and the fashion industry in some cases. And the fashion industry, I think, also served as a way to separate into hierarchy and elitism. Anyhow, it's fine that all this has happened and has been done, but from the vantage point we have now, we can see the detriment of it in some cases. And, it's so vast right now, and I'm not really prepared to speak about specifics, though I probably could if asked, It's not really kind of what my point is going at right now, okay? And I think I'm responding to maybe thoughts that I feel in response to what I'm saying, so hopefully I'm covering my bases as I go. if that's what's needed. It's probably not as needed. And I think that's kind of where I'm at personally. And that's really where I should be speaking from. Mostly that's where I'm an expert, but I just wanted to put myself in the context of what I had observed from a little bit further back and what I'm observing now. Like, this is what's happening, right? So it really does need to be taken back into an individual level for each of us, right? It's not like these huge movements that are happening outside of us are going to change anything about how we're feeling and operating inside of us. Those huge movements are a result of what's already been changing, because we see it in the 3D, meaning it's already manifest. What we're concerned with now is, what are we creating for the future from here? And this time where things are crumbling is the perfect time to be restructuring. And that is going to come from the same old programming if we don't change our own programming. And so luckily there's more strength in the light, right? And the awareness that there is allows the people who are aware to make a bigger impact. It's just true. So in that case, there may be people who are only inspired to do their inner work as a result of the changes that happen outside of them that they are then uncomfortable with or shocked by or enlightened by or inspired by. So, I mean, it's a whole divine orchestration, right? And, we don't have to really we don't have to wake people up and tell them what to do and all of that. We just have to be aware of ourselves and what example we are being, and what version of ourselves are we being? Are we being the best version of ourselves that we can be? And if we're not, are we seeking knowledge and tools and wisdom about what that would entail so that we can become that? I just noticed this plant behind me, and I just thought, oh, interesting that so this plant is a poinsettia plant, and got it, must have been in December. Was it? I feel like it was far before that, around Thanksgiving, maybe last November or before. And it was actually, I was entering Walmart and they had a cart with a bunch of plants that were dying. And an employee was coming to take the cart away because it was almost empty. And he was like, "Do you want any of these? They're free." And I actually did. There was this one and another one, and the other one looked actually more normal and full, right? But this guy was a little more decrepit. And he's lasted, and I've taken care of him, and I think what I call him is my bonsai poinsettia, because he reminds me of a bonsai tree, the way he's shaped. But just thinking of it in terms of bonsai poinsettia, right? Like I'm just redefining what that plant has to look like, and it's only through aesthetics. Like, look, that plant was so hardy that it lasted being, trampled on and branches broken and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's lasted. And trust me, I'm a plant owner that could be more conscious of taking care of my plants, and I try to be, and I have been pretty good lately. But there have been times where his soil has been completely bone dry on more than one occasion, probably at least 5 that I can think of, So this is a hardy plant, right? But it doesn't look like the traditional good-looking, perfectly shaped poinsettia plant. So other people wouldn't maybe value it for what it's meant to be, right? And Walmart certainly didn't, because they gave it to me. they were going to throw it away. Probably because they couldn't sell it, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't buy it, and maybe I wouldn't have bought it, you know? Maybe if I was shopping for a poinsettia, I probably wouldn't have bought that one, you know? But this plant, to me, it is symbolic in a way, because it's just like non-traditional, but I just love it now. I love that it's different. I love that it's like kicking. I love that it's a survivor. I love that it adapts. I love that it just kind of sticks with me even through my rough spots when I might have forgotten to water it a little too long. And it's just an example of changing our definition of what's beautiful, allowing beauty to be seen in places where you might not have seen it before. Getting, you know, like we may have been like caught up with how we're seen. And in fact, I was sort of contemplating a wound that I might have still about worrying about how I was seen, but not exactly seen, but more like letting down people who were expecting of me. You know, in this new relating paradigm, I'm suggesting that we don't expect of people. It doesn't feel very good. Some people purposely rebel against it when they can feel your expectations. And some people feel like they can never live up to it because they probably can't, because your expectations are based on what? What you want, not what they can do. You know? And is that really any way to love a person? And if it's not a love situation, if it's work or something, it's like, you know, when we have been trained into this industrialized way of being, a lot of us have chosen jobs that we don't enjoy. And I'm not saying that we can just quit our jobs and do something else, because we do have the real issue of supporting ourselves and making sure we have enough money to feed our families and house them and pay our bills. But ideally, I would think that what we're moving towards is a society where we're not doing something because it's expected of us, but we're doing something because we're inspired to it. And it is sort of like our passion. So in a society like this, we are doing the job that we're passionate about, and each of us are. So when you have somebody deliver your food, they're literally passionate about it. So you never have to worry about them feeling unfulfilled or angry or spitting in your food or, you know, running the air conditioner on it or, you know, just any of the crazy things that can happen when you put an angry person in a position of serving you, for one. But I'm just saying, like, maybe that's a person who actually likes meeting new people and whose energy benefits from coming in contact with a lot of different people. So delivery driver, plus they love driving, you know, and it just comes together as this perfect job for them to do. They're not too tempted by smelling different foods all day, so they're not going to overeat and become obese. And they have the energy and they're vital and they're excited to do it every day. And they have a car that runs very well and they're being compensated in a way that reflects their worth. And everybody is. So there is enough abundance to be spread around to the people who are doing their job with passion, because we're doing our job with passion. And it's just a way of living that would be so much more fulfilling for all people. Plus the level of competency that we each would have in our profession, you know, would be excelling, and the quality of work would be better, and the efficiency would be better, and the feeling of fulfillment that you get from what you do would be better. And I'm not saying that we would never have to do something that we don't like doing, right? Like, you still got to do your dishes, and I doubt that someone's going to make it their job to come to everyone's house and do dishes. You know, it's probably not the case. We do have dishwashers for people who really, really can't stand it, you know, put it in the dishwasher, buy a dishwasher. So, but others, you might end up doing your own dishes even though you don't love dishes. But like, can you change the way you think about doing those dishes? Can you look at it as the time that you have to be in water? And water is this renewing gift from the earth that is programmable. And that if it's programmable, that means it contains all the knowledge that everyone else has already, because all water is connected and we are connected. And can you just like recognize water as being something cleansing and refreshing, and just like take your mind out of the thought that it's taking away from you and look at where it's adding to you. And this is, again, just an example, not having facts and details exactly on what water can do for us, because it's probably a lot more than I just spewed off. But it's an example of how we can really slow down in some cases, but like get still enough to be aware of what beauty lies in our everyday experiences, in a practical sense even. So when it comes to learning something new, for instance, which is something that I have been doing, it can feel really intimidating and daunting and frustrating, I think. But the part of us that would feel those things is our ego. And it's like, well, what is your ego invested in instead of learning something new? Right? And so I've been looking at that and being like, all right, well, these parts of me that want it to be just so, that want to be in control, that want to be feeling like I'm competent, like wanting to feel like I've got this handled, that want to feel like I can figure it all out. Those parts of me would do well, to let the parts of me that are curious and that are new and that are innocent and that don't know yet take a step forward and lead us into a new knowledge and a new skill. And that skill is something that will serve us very well, and you never know. It's something that you could also become very passionate about. So a lot of us maybe have been cut off from our passion because of the way we were programmed in society, or by the parenting methods that were used, where we're not willing to be uncomfortable. We're not willing to put ourselves in an inferior or vulnerable position. We're not willing to not be the master of our world, right? Like, we'll stay in these places where we're essentially like just in a predictable way of being, and stay there without ever challenging ourselves in a way that might actually turn out to be something that we didn't even know that we love, only because we might have been too busy, for instance, trying to live up to the expectations of others, or trying to avoid pain and trauma that we hadn't yet processed, that was kind of suppressed and denied within us. So there's all kinds of distractions in this world right now that have literally been created so that we could continue distracting ourselves from our pain that's unprocessed. And what that tells me is a lot of us didn't know that we could process that pain, and didn't know the fulfillment we would feel in doing that process. But it's an uncomfortable process. So again, it's a reframe, just like the pain of learning something new and not being an expert anymore. There's a pain of delving into your unprocessed hurts and traumas that is just part of the process. But if you put it in the context of what you're achieving and the freedom you get, and also just like the skills that you're building within yourself to be present and show up for yourself, which actually translates to I love myself. What you do by addressing things in these terms is build yourself a solid foundation. Because today I was having this moment where I was contemplating, I have this long time connection with another being who is incarnated on Earth but does not interact with me in the 3D. And I feel it so strongly within my body, soul, mind, heart, that I go through this cycle of feeling confused by it. Like, is this real? Am I crazy? Or then I'll feel like, okay, yes, it's just really hard for this energy to be worked out. And each of our individual energies would have to be worked out before we could even come together in the 3D. And then I'll go through a cycle where I could maybe feel like I'm not being honored, and like if I was honored by this other person or even treated with any amount of respect, that they would at least acknowledge my existence, or not ghost me or not treat me how they have treated me. And then I have to go back into like, okay, well, maybe this is not the best situation for me, so I need to get away from this situation. And then I find that even though I try, I can't, or I go into a grief cycle where the mourning of the loss of it is overwhelmingly painful, which is also something that lends to making me feel crazy, because I feel, how can I be so in such pain over the feeling of loss of this when I think it's something I'm going to get away from, when it never even was real. But it's a real felt sense. It's a real energy that I feel, right? So if we put this in context of pretend it's not another soul that's incarnated, pretend it's a feeling that I have suppressed inside me. And here I am, I'm like, well, nothing's happening right now for me to justify feeling you, so you're not there, you're not real, there's no reason for you to be. So it's this cycle that you can go through in suppressing and denying your own feelings, where you kind of eventually remember, like, oh, I'm in a cycle. Oh, I feel this way again. Oh, I'm thinking this again, And sometimes cycles is the way that we can realize that we're stuck in something, that we have something to deal with, because we'll notice the pattern. Like, oh, this again. Oh, this again. But this morning I was realizing myself in the pattern, and I was realizing I was in the part of the pattern, and I was kind of feeling like, oh, where was I going with this? Hold on. Yeah, I was kind of feeling like, well, I feel pretty clear on what it is, and that it's a connection and it can't come together because, we're in different worlds, basically. I'm living my life this way, he's living his life that way. That's what it is. And then I was thinking, like, well, what do I feel about this? Like, why is it still coming up as a cycle of, confusion and resentment and sorrow, and those things weren't strong in me anymore, but I was feeling it had been a little while, but I was feeling the confusion again. Like, why is this here? It's kind of like this thing in the back of your drawer you're always seeing, and it's like, why am I holding on to this? Why is this? I can't get rid of it, but here it is, and I don't even know why I have it. But the thing is about it is that I felt like spirit, which is the place that I go for guidance, was the one who led me to it, was the one who reaffirmed it, was the one who kept bringing it up to me when I would let it go for a while. And so I was kind of feeling, my resentment wasn't towards the other person at all, and it usually has never been. It's towards spirit. It's like, why would you lead me this way? Why would you even put me in this position? Why would this have been the plan? Getting a little frustrated because I don't like that it's taking so long. Yeah, I don't like that it's taking so long, but it's like, I shouldn't have expectations, right? I shouldn't have expectations of the other person. But I also feel like that's fine, and I agree I shouldn't, but then why was part of the plan to put me in this position of knowing something but not having the thing, and then just having to still live? and thinking like that I'm missing something. I'm missing something that could be a different way, which would feel a lot more like I had a companion in life, that someone who could intellectually understand and match and grow and learn, you know. But those are all potentials, right? Like I can't just live on potentials, but like I was really mad that like those, like I was put in a position to know that that was the potential and to not have that, right? And then I was working through this in this depth today because I really was apparently finally willing to kind of look more directly at the cycle that I was in. And I was like, okay, well, here I am again at this stage of feeling like confused and then getting resentful. Like I got confused and then I worked it out on what the reality was, which was, yeah, I feel it, but it's not real in the reality yet. It's not manifested. It's just something I feel. And then the resentment came about, well, why should I have to feel it? Why should I have to feel it if it's not going to be manifest? And realizing that my resentment was at Spirit, because Spirit's the one who led me into it. No one made me any promises any other place. And in fact, if I really look at it and I'm honest, Spirit didn't actually make me promises. It just led me into it. So then it's like, oh, it's my feelings that I'm resenting. I'm resenting that I feel this, you know? And that's like an inner war. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do about it, right? And I just kind of surrendered in that moment. But what I felt in that moment when I surrendered was, well, what am I going to do about it? I said, well, I guess I'm on a solid foundation because I'm just going to know that that's the case. That's it. I'm not going to sink down. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to have a fit. I'm not going to threaten to off myself. I'm not going to lash out. I'm not going to hold a grudge. I'm not going to not continue on in my path. I'm not going to not go to work. And I was in that moment, I was like, oh, that's a bit different, because in the past there have been times where I've done all that. And then I was like, oh, I am on a solid foundation. I'm on a solid foundation. And that solid foundation is something that like I built over time of dealing with the things in my cycles and figuring out what I needed to deal with within myself due to what was being shown to me when I was in the cycles, right? Anything I thought or felt or tried to project, anything that came up, right? That I was just willing to look at within myself. And so the process of dealing with the old structures and being willing to break out of old ways of being, routines and safe containers that we think that we're just kind of in a predictable way of living, the benefit of doing that is that you become a version of yourself where you are solid even without that. So it's an illusion to think that you need the predictability in order to be on a solid foundation. And that is a pretty cool realization to have, right? Because then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's not even scary. Like, and that's different, right? It's like, oh, it's not even scary to be here because like apparently here I am. I'm like solid in my own foundation of just knowing myself that much, of knowing like how I'll handle things, when I'll handle things, that I can handle things, and that I don't have to have it all figured out, and I don't know exactly what's going on, but like I'm okay, you know? And the pain isn't like atrocious, and I'm not, you know, like I can still cry about it. Like if I let myself think about that person and how it's gone and all of that, and maybe that's what I'm doing is like letting it out, letting any pain residually, you know, be processed, because I wouldn't want those pains of the ways that I expect things or any outcome that I'm attached to get in the way of what Spirit actually does have in mind, because I apparently don't know what that is, and I won't know what that is, and I'm still going to have to live my life, you know? And so what I realized is like part of what that whole connection has done for me is allowed me to build a foundation that I'm really solid on with knowing myself, because it forced me, right? Like there wasn't any like back and forth. It was like all me with me. Okay, this is how I feel. This is what I'm feeling like doing. Not going to do this. I'm going to look at this. Where is this coming from? And then I would be tracing it back into my own past to find out where it was rooted from. And all the ways that I started to feel and like project out of me onto the others around me were always found within me, rooted in something that I had experienced previously and was left unprocessed. It was quite a magical journey to be brought through, realizing that everything that I was seeing outside of me was literally just a reflection of me. So to clean up all the ill feelings and the uncomfortable ways that I felt about those sort of things was a process of actually learning to love all aspects of myself. And then once I'm loving all these aspects of myself, I also knew these aspects of myself, you know? And knowing all these aspects of myself is what the solid foundation is. And that's all it is. It's not something that I got from outside of myself, like brick and mortar and like built. I didn't need anything outside of myself. It was all self-validation. It was all self-acknowledgement. It was all self-acceptance and acceptance of what I see outside of me. And it was all my own presence with whatever I feel or think about it. And this process, I think, is what our population will be going through in their own way, and maybe not exactly the way I did, but like each in our own ways, we're getting to know ourselves so that we don't feel so scared and we don't feel the need to distract ourselves so much and escape any of the pains that we've had. Because, you know, as an example, like I've processed through the pain of real tragedy and real horrifying things that a human can experience. I have experienced, and I have been present with the pain of, and including heartbreak, including being betrayed by someone that I loved so much, you know, including being bamboozled, including being humiliated, including being raped, including being assaulted and abused and abandoned, and the loss of loved ones, and just gossiped about, and failure, and more heartbreak, and more heartbreak, and more heartbreak, and the heartbreak of, you know, a custody battle and losing custody of my children, and then the heartbreak of illness and my loved ones, and suffering of the people that I love, and just all, like, I'm not saying that I've had it worse than anyone else, so everyone else should have a cakewalk. Not at all. We're all equipped differently. And so what I am saying is I'm pretty convinced that whatever we've gone through as humans, that we are so resilient that if we just engage with that process of allowing ourselves to be resilient, that it is intrinsic within us, that we can find our way, and that we can actually process and become the version of ourselves that can let that pain come through us. You know, like everything is energy, including pain, and pain that is stuck within us and repeating in a loop and kind of being repressed and denied. It's just meeting a resistance. And so when we acknowledge and validate ourselves on why we have it, we get to start softening that resistance. Once we accept it, okay, it can be here. And then when we're present with it, our mere presence gets that pain reanimated, and it starts moving through us again. And it's no longer repressed, and then we no longer have to fill our time with things to distract ourselves from it. Addictions or scrolling or whatever it may be. And we do this over and over again to clear up the backlog of things that we might not have processed yet. And that right there is life-changing. You know, for me personally, I would get like liberation highs. Like once that energy moved through me again, I would just feel so much lighter and freer and just like, wow. And you just feel the difference and also see the feedback, the difference in the reality. The people that you're dealing with, you know, they're acting different. They're treating you different. Like people that you encounter in public are just like, because it matches, now you have a different reflection. You're no longer being filtered through the view of that energy that you were harboring because you reanimated it and let it move through you. And then now that you're the version of yourself that can process that, you'll no longer have to behave in ways that explicitly aim you at avoiding those things that could cause that pain again. So if you've been heartbroken and then you process the pain of the heartbreak, you no longer feel that like visceral aversion to love or the fear of being hurt again, because you know that you're a version of yourself that can handle the pain of that you got your back, that you have the courage. Because once you cut yourself off from that, you know, it's like you're protecting yourself, right? Like you think you feel safe in that space where, oh, I'm just not going to feel those feelings anymore. I'm not going to fall in love. And you don't realize all the people that you hurt in the process because you're just keeping your vision so small around that topic and cut off certain parts of yourself. So yeah, you can pass by opportunities and stuff, but like literally your behaviors, whatever they may be, however you're acting instead, is hurting other people in the same way that you're avoiding your own pain. So for an example is if you have decided to never be in a committed relationship again because you were heartbroken and you proceed to, you know, have like hookups, right? You know, women actually, upon orgasm, release oxytocin. It's the thing that makes them feel love. So even if they're hooking up, oftentimes you'll find, and you probably have if you're a male, that women will get more attached or they'll expect something of you, even if they said that it was going to be okay to just hook up, right? You'll feel it. Even if they don't say it, you might feel it, you know, and then that's when you try to take distance from that person because you feel an expectation, right? Well, energetically, what you've done is, yeah, you're denying that. You may have had a verbal conversation that it's never going to be that. You know they feel more. They feel a love. They feel what you are fearing, and then you move away, and then maybe find another one. And if you find another one and another one and another one and another one, look at the string of hearts you are breaking. All because you won't face your own heartbreak. And this is just an example of how this works. And you can apply this example to a lot of things in life that you might be avoiding because of the time you got hurt. And the unprocessed hurt that is still harbored within you, dictating how you see life and how you feel and how you act. It affects so many levels of our life and is a lens that we see life through when we haven't processed through the stuff that we've been through that caused us overwhelm, pain, or misunderstanding from the past. And each of us doing the work on ourselves to clean that up is what gets us there. Like, is what puts us in a position to even go towards our passion, to go towards learning something new, to go towards, connection again. And these are the things that are really going to help build a society that is sustainable and that we want to be in, that we want to live in, that, that isn't full of as much suffering. I'm not saying we can eliminate suffering. I'm not saying no one will ever suffer again. I'm not saying you'll never suffer again. Tony Robbins has a quote. There's a excerpt from something that he said, which was like from one of his seminars. I heard him say that pain is a part of life and suffering is optional. And I think maybe it was him that explained that suffering is a pain that you think you can't get rid of. And we know now that we can process pain. Maybe everyone doesn't know that, but this is something that's becoming known. We can process our pain. The old pain can be processed in a safe manner. You know, you get control of yourself, you get conscious. If you can consciously process your pain, you'll be released from it, and then you're no longer in suffering. So some people might be stuck in suffering sometime. You know, I'm not saying that I can end suffering on earth or whatever, but for the most part, I am saying that it's possible. You know, it's possible that you as an individual can end your suffering. And it might take a while, right? Like it depends on how much backlog of stuff you have to deal with. I used to equate it like this, because when I first started out, I had a lot of backlog of unprocessed trauma and emotions and a lot of misunderstandings about life and what it meant and what I was doing here. And so as I started to do this work in clearing up some of the backlog, all of a sudden this analogy came to me, and it was a way for me to use words to depict what I was experiencing, which was, it was as if I was in a room where there was hoarding, right? So there was things stacked up around me, right? And then as I did the work, it was like the room was being cleared out. You know, things were being cleared out of the room. And then all of a sudden, when I looked at the room, I could see what was what. I could see, oh, this energy, this isn't even mine. You know? Everything became more and more and more and more clear the more I cleared out the room of hoard, you know, of the stuff that was unprocessed. Until it was like, oh, now the room is nice. It's like aesthetically pleasing in here, and I don't mind being present. And now when something comes into my room, I'm immediately aware of it, right? And I don't think I'm actually quite there, right? I think I still have a couple boxes over here. Right now I know, I'm aware, oh, there's a few boxes right here. I'm dealing with those now. Until something comes into my room new, and then I deal with that. And it's like, okay, now I'll go to my boxes, you know? So this process for me has felt worthwhile, right? Because all the boxes that I removed revealed the bones, the structure of me, like who I am. Like now I can see who I am. Now I know myself because I know the person that did all that work. I know the person that showed up for me every time. That was me. My granddaughter was having a little meltdown yesterday. She's 4 years old. And she has watched the movie, what is it? What's that movie that has like the little cartoon with the emotions and the kid feels them all? Inside Out. I think it's Inside Out. Where the cartoon is basically like all these emotions, ways to feel, are like depicted as running the show inside this little girl. And then on the Inside Out 2 movie, these emotions start to become the emotions of an adolescent teen, where there's more like insecurity and envy, and these type of things get introduced. And my granddaughter has watched this movie, and I recognized that when she was upset because I said no about something. Maybe it was giving her a marshmallow or something. And she started like going within herself like this, right? And then she started saying, nobody likes me. This is the worst day ever. And, right? And I heard her say that, and I recognized that from the movie. The little girl in the movie has a moment where she's like struggling with this inner voice saying, nobody likes me. Because I just thought it was so weird for my granddaughter to say that. Like, where did that come from? And then it clicked, oh, it's that movie. So, you know, I asked her if she would like a hug, and, you know, I sat, and she's like, yeah, can I sit with you? And I said yes, and she sat right next to me, and I was like, you know, how come you are saying, like, nobody likes you? Did you learn that in the movie? And she said, yeah. And I said, oh. And then I said, you know, there's a way that you can make sure that somebody always likes you. She said, yeah. And I said, yeah. I said, as long as you like you, then you know that somebody always likes you. And she said, oh, you know, and it's true. It's like, make sure you like you. And that means that maybe there's these things that you do that you wouldn't want anyone else to know you did because you know that they're shameful, right? One of the decisions that I made early on in this process, which I'm so thankful I did, and it took a big weight off my shoulders, is I stopped doing things I didn't want anyone to know about. Because that was the gauge for me, right? It's like, oh, if I don't want no one to know about this. I'm not saying I want everyone to know all my business, but you know what I mean. Like, if you're doing anything that you would never want anyone to know about, then you have an idea that you're breaking your own values. You're doing something against yourself, too. Not just whatever you're doing. It's against you. Because you feel shame about it. You can't just be in truth about it. So I stopped doing things like that, and I stopped gossiping. And that was hard, actually, at first. And for a lot of years, there were certain people where if I started talking to them, it would just be gossip, and I would just fall into it. And then it took a time, and it took me really getting stronger about holding myself to my own standard that I had made myself, which is that I was not going to gossip anymore, And excuse me, eventually I did have to leave some people in my life that just always defaulted to gossip because that was their way. And some people respect that I don't want to gossip, and they'll avoid that, or I can just gently remind them if it comes up, and they'll go off the topic. But some people I couldn't, and it was like, okay, well, now I realize our whole relationship, all it is gossip, so I gotta, I'm sorry, but like I'm growing in a different direction now, So holding myself to the standards that meant I like me. And also when I started showing up for myself by doing all this work and just like, I didn't necessarily like me or trust me in the beginning, but over time, after many years of doing it for myself and over again, and always having my own back, I started to realize, oh, I am actually trustworthy. I can trust myself, and wow, I am pretty lovable because, like, look at me showing up for me. Like, look at me. So it was a process of earning my own trust and love and actually learning and knowing myself and liking that version of myself. And it didn't come through excluding the parts of me that I didn't like. It came through learning to love the parts of me that I didn't like, so that when I decided to not gossip, I didn't just say, people who gossip suck. No. I acknowledged that I was gossiping, and I validated why I was gossiping. I understood myself first before I made any changes. I said, okay, well, I was brought up in a family that gossips a lot. Like, I was like 11 children in my mother's family. Like, she was one of 11 children. And how they know each other's news is everyone tells each other. So that's how you know what's going on with your 11th sibling that you haven't talked to. Excuse me. It's maybe practical. I don't know. Because you're not going to have those, 11 phone calls every day or 10 phone calls every day to find out how everyone's doing. Anyways, and then, it actually was fun for me to gossip sometimes in my high school years. Not high school. 20-somethings, right? Yeah. I would, when I got with my first boyfriend, later, I can remember us kind of talking about other people. And, in a judgmental way, often, right? That's what gossip is, but not always. Gossip doesn't have to be judgmental. Anyhow, there have been times that I was gossiping, right? And I was understanding, why did I do that? Well, it was our way of relating. It was our way of, like, gauging if we were good people or not, or gauging who the people were to us and whether we wanted to be around them and whether we could trust them, and and Anyway, I understood why I was gossiping. And I actually did enjoy analyzing people and finding out about people and people watching. So I validated myself on why, right? It's like, okay, well, even though I don't want to do this anymore, like I understand why I've been doing this. I very well understand. And I don't hate that version of me. That version of me is a version of me that was just living her life the best she knew how at that time. She didn't yet know the reason why she didn't want to gossip. You know, she was still enjoying it. That's okay. So it's not like I hate that part of me that gossiped. So then I accept, well, here I am with a gossip habit and a desire to not have it anymore, but I do have it, you know, I accept that. And then be present with all the feelings that I have about that. Like, you know,